Welcome back to Sorry to Podcast This. I'm your host, Danielle Holland.
I'm Anna Connor.
And joining us today on STPT, returning to the pod, he's a partner in the New York law firm of Kramer Levin, where he headed the pro bono program for 17 years. He has participated in pro bono LGBTQ rights work since the 1990s, serving as co-counsel in Hernandez v. Robles, the case seeking equal marriage rights under the New York Constitution. He has received pro bono awards from the American, New York State, and New York City Bar Associations, and has written commentary for the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, The Nation, as well as others. Welcome back, Jeffrey Trachtman.
Thank you.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeffrey.
How's everybody doing?
You know what? I think for once we actually have something exciting to talk about. So let's just dive right in. Can you talk about the Supreme Court's historic 6-3 ruling on a landmark civil rights law this week protecting gay, bisexual, and transgendered workers in the workplace?
Yes, I can. It is, I guess, a little bit of a surprise, mainly in the 6-3 vote. That was really a pleasant surprise to see two conservative justices sign on, and Justice Gorsuch wrote the decision. This is a very, very significant decision legally and culturally, I think. Legally, because it immediately means that all LGBTQ people are protected under Title VII, which means for most employers with 15 or more employees, you can't be fired for being gay or bi or trans. And that is huge, and especially for transgender rights, it's the first time the Supreme Court has really recognized their existence and given them legal rights. And so that is very momentous. It's really significant because also the definition of discrimination in Title VII, which is just about employment, is used by other statutes. So, for example, the Affordable Care Act and Title IX, which deals with schools. A lot of the horrible things the Trump administration is trying to do with regulations, like the thing last Friday, if you saw about trans health care, that's basically moot because those statutes go by what Title VII means, and the Supreme Court has said that Title VII protects trans people as well as LGBTQ people generally. So it's very significant.
So like on Friday, the Department of Health and Services in the Trump administration undid protections for transgender patients against discrimination by doctors, hospitals, and health insurance companies. So does that essentially make that null and void now? Because
it should
of this
be
cascading effect?
I mean, they may try to keep doing bad things, but essentially that's an interpretation. Regulations only can interpret a statute, but the statute is powerful over the regulations. The statute sets the law, and the Supreme Court has said what the statute means, so they shouldn't be able to do that anymore.
Trump's response to that was pretty interesting yesterday when he said it was a powerful decision and they made the decision that they made and we have to stick with it, something like that.
Trump said that? I don't know if he knows what he's saying from moment to moment. Today he just
Never.
It was an AIDS vaccine. I never heard about this AIDS vaccine. But
it's ridiculous. So yeah, he maybe he's feeling that there's too much to fight right now. I don't know. Who knows?
The big limiting problem with this decision, or the big sort of footnote that everybody has to keep in mind, is there is still all these arguments about religious exemptions, and this was the subject that my firm's brief in this case was on. There's going to be a lot of people arguing that, hey, I have a religious right to discriminate. And Gorsuch, even in his otherwise wonderful decision, said that might be the case. There's a the Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and there are a bunch of state versions of that basically are supposed to protect free exercise. But people are reading it so broadly. True free exercise to me is you can't make somebody work on their Sabbath. That's actually making them not follow their religion. But now people are taking this very broad view, a lot of which is backlash to the marriage decisions as well, saying I have a religious objection to this and I have the right to live my religion even in the commercial sphere, even when I'm running a business. And that was the Masterpiece Cake shop case as well. And that's still unsettled, and that's still going to be litigated. And there's actually a case in the Supreme Court coming up this next term about the Catholic Church doing adoption placements in Philadelphia and saying we have a religious right to not place kids with same-sex couples. So they're performing a government function by contract, and they're saying that that's part of their free exercise. That's to me, much too broad a definition of free exercise. It basically could render all civil rights laws unenforceable. Back in the 60s, they said, I have a religious objection to Black people sitting at my lunch counter. Supreme Court laughed that one out of court. But when it comes to gay people, they're much more willing, and we still have a conservative majority on the court, so it's still going to be a tough, hard-fought issue. And that's my one real concern and footnote to the very happy day yesterday.
Is that the next stage then in this fight and in this movement for transgender rights?
Not a lot of groups have their basic existence denied, you know, and that's been a struggle. So I think there's a cultural significance to yesterday, and the fact that the two really conservative justices of the Supreme Court treated transgender people like people with rights is itself a kind of revolutionary moment. But there's also still a lot of other change that has to happen in society, culturally, and between people, within families, within institutions, and there's a lot more work.
Two of the three original employees in this case are dead now, right? That are no longer here. So many of the intersecting impacts on one's health from this discrimination.
Yeah, well, I think it is a public health issue, as we've been discussing the last few weeks, that racism is a public health issue. And we're also seeing the intersectionality of people who are trans and Black, and that is perhaps the most vulnerable group in the country. It's the people who are most at risk. I work a lot with the Peter Cecchino Youth Project in New York, which represents young people experiencing homelessness. And a large portion of their clients are LGBTQ. About a third of them are trans or gender nonconforming, and about 98% are people of color. So that's the overlap of bigotry and disadvantages and so on that makes it a particularly vulnerable group. We had a huge rally in Brooklyn a couple of days ago in front of the Brooklyn Museum for a Black Trans Lives Matter rally, and there are pictures on Facebook. It's very inspiring, thousands of people. I hope they were all wearing masks, but it was a huge crowd. It's just a lot happening all at once, and we've had to pivot from COVID to Black Lives Matter, and it's hopeful in a certain sense, all the activism, but still obviously tragic and stressful. And yesterday was just such a nice moment to be able to breathe and say, good news can still happen.
My body has been in so much pain lately. And I actually was really scared last night because I was like, I hope I don't have to start taking pain pills because my body has been in so much pain. I hate taking anything. So I try to just do everything naturally. But last night I had a dream that I was hugging someone, and it was just like we were just hugging for a long time, and I felt safe and it felt really good. And so I woke up feeling mentally and emotionally pretty good. My body still hurts, but I needed that hug, you know? And right now is a time where, I mean, it wasn't even a real hug, but my body took it, my soul took it as a real hug. I mean, I get hugs from my family, but this was like some kind of otherworldly thing, you know? So it's just, we need that, you know, right now.
We do. I am very happy to be sheltering in place with my partner, who's a big hugger. So we're good. We have we have kids. Well, you got kids.
I have a kid. I have a very cuddly child and two dogs. But yeah, it's an interesting time to not have like an adult.
And just kids can be great, you know. It depends on the age, but
thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank
you so much.
Our listeners, you can find Jeffrey, facebook.com/Jeff_Trachtman, on Twitter @JTrachtman, on Instagram @JeffreyTrachtman. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be right back with